I remember that hospital more than I remember the city it was in. The walls were painted a pale shade of yellow, but somehow the color felt cold. Every hallway hummed with machines that sounded like mechanical breathing. My wife had been admitted there after weeks of pain and uncertainty. I had watched her endure endless tests and nights without rest. Each morning nurses came in with polite smiles and clipped voices. They carried trays, charts, and sometimes flowers from visitors. But when I saw those flowers, I only thought about how quickly they would die. I knew I had to bring her something different. Something she could hold on to long after the hospital smell faded. At first I wandered into the hospital gift shop. There were cheerful balloons shaped like stars and hearts. There were stuffed animals with stitched smiles. There were endless bouquets in bright paper wrappings. I stared at them, but nothing felt right. She deserved more than a fragile gesture. I walked out and paced through the street outside. Cold air brushed against my face and carried the scent of rain. I kept hearing her voice in my head. She once told me she disliked temporary things. She said, "I want gifts that last longer than a moment." Those words struck me harder than ever that evening. Finally, I found a little shop on a quiet corner. Its windows were dimly lit and dust clung to the glass. Inside, shelves were filled with wooden carvings and stone figures. My eyes settled on a single object in the corner. It was a hand-carved stone heart. The edges were rough, the surface was imperfect, but it looked alive. I picked it up and felt its weight pressing into my palm. It was not gentle like flowers, but it was unbreakable. I thought of my wife instantly. She was bruised, tired, and scarred from her fight, but she was still strong. I bought it and asked the shopkeeper to wrap it. He looked puzzled but didn't ask questions. When I returned to the hospital, it was nearly midnight. The halls were quieter, only a few nurses moved silently through the ward. I stepped into her room, carrying the package carefully. She looked at me with tired eyes that still tried to smile. I handed it to her without saying a word. She opened it slowly, peeling away the paper. When the stone heart appeared in her hand, she gasped softly. She traced its rough surface with her fingertips. For a moment she was quiet, and I feared she didn't understand. But then tears filled her eyes and her lips curved into a fragile smile. She whispered, "This is perfect." I sat beside her and held her other hand. She told me flowers would have been gone in days. But this stone could stay with her forever. The nurse came in and paused when she saw it. My wife laughed for the first time in weeks. She said it was a brutal but beautiful gift. That laugh filled the room more than any bouquet could have. From that night on, the stone heart never left her side. She kept it on the bedside table where she could see it. When pain struck, she held it close to her chest. When fear crept in, she traced its edges for comfort. Doctors noticed it and sometimes asked about it. She always answered proudly that it was her symbol of strength. As the days passed, her strength began to return. She sat up longer, smiled more, and even joked again. The stone was always in reach, like her quiet shield. Weeks later she was finally discharged from the hospital. When we left, she placed the stone heart in her bag. She said it had earned the right to come home with her. At home she placed it in the living room on a small shelf. Every morning sunlight struck it, casting small shadows across the wall. Visitors often asked about it. She told them it was the best gift she had ever received. People laughed when she called it brutal, but she explained. The hospital was brutal, the fight was brutal, but love had to be just as strong. Years passed and cards faded, balloons deflated, flowers withered. But the stone heart remained where she had placed it. It gathered dust but never lost its weight or its meaning. Sometimes she picked it up, running her fingers over the scars in the stone. She said it reminded her of her own scars, proof that she had survived. Even after all this time, I still look at it often. And every time I do, I remember her tears, her laughter, and her strength. That heart was not just a gift, it was a promise. A promise that no matter how heavy life became, we would carry it together. Flowers may fade, but love carved in stone endures forever.